All right, all right, all right, all right. Oh, if only y'all knew how many times I've recorded, re-recorded, deleted, edited, unedited this video. This shit's nuts. Here we are, Smallville Chronicles, episode 2. We talking about Lex Luthor. Hold on. Okay, so first off, off rip, I'm gonna say this. I'm way more of a Marvel guy than a DC guy. But one thing that I've always been jealous of for DC are the villains. I don't know what it is, but like the writers, like the DC writers, when it comes to villains, Michael Jordan, Michael Jackson. And obviously this whole Smallville, like if you're new to the Smallville Chronicles thing, the hype for me started with the James Gunn Superman movie. I thought that was a decent movie. But I've been saying on record a bunch of times, Superman is a boring superhero to me. I feel like, just like obviously because he's older, the way he's written, I think is just conducive for very boring and linear stories. The fact that like he has every single power under the sun, and the only way you counter him is with kryptonite. So that means that like either one or two things is gonna happen in the story. Either one, they're gonna have kryptonite, or two, they gotta find another motherfucker that can fly as fast as he can, punch as hard as he can, and do all the other shit too. After a certain point, those stories get kind of stale. And as much as I like the James Gunn Superman movie, that's exactly what happened, where obviously you got a Lex Luthor, but he can only compete when he makes an Ultraman. In Batman vs. Superman, they got a Lex Luthor, but he can only compete when he makes a Doomsday. Then you got the the Man of Steel movie. You essentially get a second, Superman with General Zod. I'm just like, how many more times can we flip this shit to be, the exact same story? And honestly, that's kind of like why, to me, I hate Batman for a multitude of reasons, right? But Batman versus Superman as a concept to me doesn't make any sense, because I'm like, we're talking about a god that could essentially do everything, and somehow I'm supposed to believe that, he struggles against a dude in a bat costume. Crazy. But I feel like that should also apply to Lex Luthor. But if you've seen the title of this video, I feel like Lex Luthor, for whatever reason, seems to be a unicorn. Because as much as everything I'm describing applies to Lex, there's something about his dynamic with Superman that just makes the stories more interesting to me. Like I haven't really put my finger down on why, but there's just something about Lex. There is just something about Lex as a Superman villain, for whatever reason I feel works. But we're talking about Smallville here specifically, and in Smallville, Lex isn't a villain actually. Smallville is more so like an origin story for Clark Kent, if you will. And so the story they decided to tell, I don't know if this is specific to Smallville or if it happens in the comics too, but in Smallville, Clark Kent and Lex Luthor are actually, I guess you could say, childhood friends. Like they know each other way before Superman becomes a hero of Metropolis and the Daily Planet, Lois Lane, all that bullshit, right? And Lex serves almost as like Superman's big brother. And I feel like that dynamic is honestly chef's kiss. So because this is like a typical high school story with Clark Kent still in high school, obviously learning about his powers. Jonathan and Martha are trying to educate him to be, the Boy Scout that Superman is. He's still very much innocent. And I feel like that innocence doesn't quite work well or translate into like adult, Clark Kent. Because I feel like then it comes off a lot like Goku, where it's just like, for how naive and trusting you are of people, this shit doesn't really add up. I understand wanting to have like an innocent, pure-hearted, adult hero in the Gokus and the Superman, but as I'm getting older, I feel like it becomes a lot harder for me to believe. And so that's why I feel like this whole very pure-hearted character works way better in the context of like he's a high school kid. And so, now taking it back to Lex, I think Lex works as Superman's friend because he's a little bit older, and he comes from a little bit more of a twisted, gray area background. Like Lex got stories. Lex has lore, and I feel like the way he's learned to interact with the world, even though at least the way they present him is still being, a good person or has good intentions, I feel like he does a really good job showing Clark like how things aren't as cut and dry. Because I feel like Jonathan Kent is kind of like a black and white type character where I feel like he oversimplifies shit a lot. Whereas Lex kind of blurs that line of like doing the wrong thing for the right reasons. And I think that tells a really dope story. I think makes coming of age stories that much more compelling. Like showing somebody the lessons that we all have had to learn as we've grown up. Beautiful. Beautiful. I'm telling you, this Smallville show, I got a whole bunch of shit that I actually want to say about it, but I'm trying to stay focused. Like, Smallville as a superhero show might actually be top 3. Honestly, bro. I'm at the point where Lex is actually in like he's coming back from the asylum. Like they had him in like, a psychiatric like facility or whatever. Which, by the way, I don't know what it is with Superman and especially Batman. Why do motherfuckers have to be crazy all the time? Like especially for Batman, do we really need to talk about like why is he beating up on so many people that belong in asylums? Like y'all don't find that crazy? I think the story of Lex Luthor in Smallville is poetic as fuck, and it honestly kind of ties into why I like time travel movies so much. I think it's so dope when motherfuckers, when you tell a story about inevitability, when you try to get away from this one thing, and over the course of the show you realize that you actually become the very thing that you've been trying to stay away from this whole time. Cue The Boys, how Butcher hates soups, and like, at the end of the latest season, I think season 4, Butch becomes a soup, you know what I mean? And like you see him turn into like Homelander just on the opposite side. Cue the Flash movie where they're trying to fight, I think it's supposed to be Savitar. I don't think it's Reverse Flash. I think it's supposed to be Savitar. And then you see that like the variant of Flash or Barry Allen ends up turning into the very villain that, they were fighting this whole time of the movie. And with Lex's arc right here, I feel like his whole thing so far is how much he hates his father and how much, he's trying to escape the many people that his father has fucked over by proving that he's not Lionel Luthor. It is dope to see that like as so many things go wrong in his life, he starts to kind of adopt the Machiavellian, philosophy that his father is so desperately trying to instill in him. Obviously enhanced by the fact that we know that, Lex Luthor got to be Lex Luthor eventually. But, that aside, I feel like it's really dope to see, how like we're spending so many hours with him. Because mind you, like Smallville is 10 seasons, 24 episodes a season, 40 minutes an episode. So we're spending hours with this guy. And as like, the episodes go by, you see how he started off as obviously an asshole privileged kid. But he is being tortured. Like his father's mind games are going to get to him. He is a paranoid person, justifiably, understandably, you know what I mean? And as he accidentally pushes people away because he's constantly on his toes because his father is crazy, you see how like his life almost, as much as he's not trying to be his father, his life is forcing him down that path. And I think what's dope about it too is the fact that we can understand how a motherfucker like that becomes Lex Luthor, but it still doesn't excuse it. And this might be, purely subjective at this point, but I feel like what's dope about this story is even though we're seeing inside the mind of a villain, we still don't sympathize with him because we do think that like, and they say this all the time in Smallville, at the end of the day, it is a choice to be an asshole. Like you like regardless of what happens to you, bro, you don't have to be Lionel Luthor. Which is why I feel like ultimately it's inexcusable. But I feel like Lex Luthor feels so real. You know what I mean? And shout out, I think it's Mike Rosenbaum, like also an incredible performance. But this depiction of Lex Luthor feels like a real person. When you see the shit he's gone through, the many of people who have really ended up being double agents for his father, I get it. I get why you feel as though it's kill or be killed out here. You know what I mean? And yeah, no, I just feel like that depiction of Lex they just do such a great job. Not necessarily humanizing him, but getting you to sympathize with him. I can't imagine what it's like, you know what I mean, like watching this show not knowing who Lex Luthor is supposed to become. But I do think that like knowing what he's supposed to be is a special, I'm not gonna say it's a better experience, but it's a special experience. Because also, like, and this is kind of like a side note, as much as Thanos is undeniably one of the greatest comic book villains we've ever seen on the big screen or in a live action show or movie, I think the whole like snap half of life because there's not enough resources out here. Like, if you think about it for more than 5 seconds, you can see why that shit makes no sense. when it comes to Lex, all the people he pushes away because, like, you know, him investigating Clark is like a point of contention. I understand why Lex is super, you could call it curiosity, but why he's so thorough about the things that happen in his life. And that's because his father is nuts. And I think Lionel might actually deserve his own video. But no, I think that's a much better way to write a villain that you can maybe not agree with, but you can understand and still not humanize. Because I do think that, like, at the end of the day, I do think Lex Luthor becoming the man that I think he's going to becoming Lionel Luthor, you're still crazy. Lionel Luthor is a twisted individual. There's nothing that you could do to justify that kind of person to me. But I get it. If that even makes sense. I don't know, bro. But Lex Luthor is a fucking insane character. I don't know how I feel about him in terms of a Superman villain, but as a villain, chef's kiss. Chef's kiss. Like he's like a better Obadiah Stane, a better Justin Hammer to me. I wonder if the same way Penguin got a show, I wonder if a Lex Luthor focused show, how that would do. You know what I mean? I feel like he might have potential to be one of them characters that could actually carry a show by himself. But yeah, that's all I had to say about Lex. I think it's dope to have a character push Superman more so into the sides of like ethics and right and wrong, because I feel like when you're that powerful as a superhero, your philosophy and your morals like being challenged is more so where I feel like the cool stories lie. Which is why Injustice is probably my favorite Superman story, and why I think the Batman versus Superman, like what they were setting up in that movie, I was actually really on board with. I don't know what the fuck they were trying to do with the movies that came after, but I do think that, like, at least the story that Batman versus Superman was trying to set up was an interesting one. But yeah, Lex, and also we can't ignore the fact that, like, the motherfucker is just cool as fuck. Like, Lex got so many like one-liners, his demeanor, his aura, bro. Like, Lex Luthor is about his business, and I respect that about him. You know what I'm saying?